Well, good evening. I can't hardly see. That means you all look better than you ever have. I want to speak a little bit this evening on the Grasshopper Complex found in Numbers 13 if you want to follow along. This is probably something all of us have heard in sermons before, but it certainly is applicable to today, as Romans 15:4 says. Those things that were written before were written for our learning. And certainly a lot of things that happened in the Old Testament are still the point and the message and what we're supposed to gather from it still goes on today. There are still people afraid of giants and have problems in their lives, and it seems insurmountable to them, and not trusting in God, and that's what we're going to be discussing a little bit this evening. As we begin our reading in Numbers 13, I want you to look with me in verses 26 and 27. And this talking about the spies that were sent out, and they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them, watch, the fruit of the land. And they told him, Moses, we came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Now, what gets me about this part of Scripture is they had proof positive in their hands. They could see it, something tangible, that God had led them to a place where a better life could be found. I mean, it was right there. I've had historians and books that I've read that have made this, they wondered how big the fruit was and how big and plentiful this happened to be. And I've heard all different kinds of estimations and how great it was. That God doesn't do anything second rate. So here we find people, God's people, if you will, God's chosen people. Now, as I mentioned last week or 2 weeks ago, that it's a misnomer when people want to say, maybe it was Wednesday night I said this, when people want to say and claim that that Israel and the Jews today are God's chosen people, still God's chosen people. And that if we don't believe that, we're kind of lost individuals and sad individuals, when the truth of the matter is, now spiritual Israel, the church, those are God's chosen people. Now by chosen, I don't mean predestined individually. I believe God predestined a way. God chose a way. He had a scheme of redemption. And He left it up to every individual to say yes or no. That's how God, when you come across that term that you find, predestined, or He predestined us, or foreordained us, that He predestined a way, not certain individuals. I hope all of us realize that. But here they had the proof right in their hand. And again, this is proof positive to me. We look at this, that if we are not willing to fight for the good life that God has right before us, and God is leading us through His Word to that good life, through His Word, if you will, to the promised land. If we're not willing to fight for that and stand up for it, and to see God for who God is, the Creator, He that ex nihilo, out of nothing, spoke this world into existence. A God that's all-powerful. That's the God that we follow. The God who empowers us through His Word. The God that says, I'll never forsake you. I'll never leave you. Hebrews 13 and verse 5. The God that says to us through inspiration, all things are possible through Christ Jesus. Philippians 4 and verse 13. Same God, Philippians 4 and verse 19. Shall supply us with all of our needs, right? This is the God that we follow. And it's the same God. God hasn't gone anywhere. We serve and worship and follow the same God that they follow. I see a parallel here, don't you? Where God says, I'm trying to lead you somewhere. And my children seem to be fighting me every step of the way. Then we go on because the report was, wow, look at the fruit of the land flowing with milk and honey. You've been out here 40 years complaining about what you've been eating. God sent quail to you. My favorite food in the world, by the way. They all left Arkansas for some reason. But, sent quail, and they even griped about that. That just boggles my mind. Eating all these things that God had given them, God had seen them through, and yet here you go. Land of the giants. Notice what they say here. This is kind of puzzling. In verses 28 through 29 of Numbers 13. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. Now, I'll get to that a little bit later on. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negev, or Negev. Anytime you see that, that means south country. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the hill country. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. See, let me tell you what's going on here. The descendants of Anak were the Nephilim, which usually when you find in the Bible something ends, a tribe that ends in I-M, those were usually giants. It's not like in the book of Enoch where they were 400 or 450 feet tall or whatever. We don't believe in that nonsense, but not a literal translation of that. They had a giant problem on their mind, and it caused some to cower in a corner. You ever face a problem in your life? Maybe it's not a person, but it's a problem. And you kind of go, woe is me. Maybe you have a little pity party. Maybe you wonder why why this problem has arisen. You don't know why it's there. You don't know how you're going to tackle it. And time after time, you go and worship the Lord, and you still worry about that problem. And the problem is that you're worrying about something that God can handle, but you're not giving God the glory or even giving God a chance to even handle it. Because attitude gets in the way. Satan wants us to have those bad attitudes, wants us to doubt God every chance that we get. Listen to what Caleb had to say, and Joshua and Caleb are the only two of the 603,550 fighting men, the only ones of the men who left the Egypt that entered into the promised land. We all know that. But listen to what they say when they confront this problem. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, now I want you to notice this too, because you have Caleb saying this, you have the people, and you also have Moses and Aaron involved, don't you? Moses, the leader, going to make a decision, but watch. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it. Caleb standing for God and said, I've listened to all these naysayers tell us we can't get it done. I've listened to all these, if you will, church folk that are negative Nellies and basically are saying our God isn't able. God won't be with us on this. These people are too strong. We can't trust God with this problem. And he goes on. Then the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are. How do you like that? You see, the problem was at this point the men of Israel looked upon the enemy with more admiration and confidence than they did God himself. You ever faced anything in your life? And the way you handled that problem or looked at that problem, you were basically saying, God, you can't handle this? I hope the answer to that is no. Ever have doubts about God being there for you? You ever have thoughts that maybe because you're going through hard times that God doesn't love you? Maybe you're sick and God doesn't love you or care for you. Lose a loved one. God doesn't love or care for me. These are thoughts that people have doubting God. They are human thoughts. They're real thoughts. But in all of that, it's a gentle nudging, if you will, of God putting him aside. Well, not totally, but still yet, in effect, a gentle nudging of a little bit of doubt. Even after 40 years, they hadn't learned that with God, life is filled with open doors and endless and limitless possibilities. I don't know about you. I can look back on my life and see many opportunities where God has opened up doors. And I've also can see many opportunities where Satan wanted those doors closed. That it's been a battle of will, and a battle of just recognizing where God would have me to go. And what am I saying about this? Every single day of our lives, and I've mentioned this often, but every single day of our life, there are a series of choices that we have to make. A choice to go down the path God would have us, and say no to sin, to whatever temptation it might be. Maybe your temptation has been in the past alcohol, language, drugs, men, women, whatever it happens to be, money. If that is a big problem for you, and doing anything you can to get it, nothing wrong with it. But we know the love of money and the lusting after and putting that ahead of God and godly values. We all know that's wrong, just like lusting after anything else. Ungodly nature. So God opens up these doors. What do I mean by that? Each and every day we say yes to God. We're walking down the right path, going through the right door. Every time there's that strong temptation to step back and to be what Satan would have us to be and say no to God. But we refuse to do it because we want to be strong and we want to be like Caleb. And by the way, Caleb was the one that when everybody else was walking away from the idea, he says, give me this mountain. Remember how old he was? How old was Caleb when he said that? Remember? How old? Well, about your age, Jack, 130. 80 years of age, wasn't he? 80. 80-year-old man saying, God's not through with me and I'm not through with God. 80-year-old man saying, there isn't any retirement program when it comes to God. 80-year-old man says, I'm going to do what God would have me to do. Listen, until I die, until I leave this earth. So here we have just a fantastic example, Numbers 13, 32 through 33. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report. Oh, here we go. Does it surprise any of you that bad news travels faster than good news? I guess none of you are shocked about that. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who came from the Nephilim, or Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. We're just little bitty peepee. We can't possibly find a way to destroy these people or to have the victory. And yet we find in all of this, what they were displaying by their attitudes is the very opposite of having faith in God. Remember what Hebrews chapter 11 says and verse 1? I want to really hone in on this. Now faith, watch this. This is biblical faith, true faith. What Hebrews 11 and verse 6, the Bible says, without faith it's impossible to please God. Remember that? Okay. For they who have that faith are going to have to believe that God is, that He rewards those who come to Him. But watch this. Now faith, watch, is the assurance of things hoped for. You see what that's saying? Faith is that you are absolutely positive. Biblical hope is not something that you desire or wish is going to happen. It's something, biblical hope is a settled issue. It is an assured attitude. God, you said it, I believe it. And so here we go. Now faith is the assurance, the certainty of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. God, I don't have to see it to believe it. All I've got to do is have your word on it. And that settles the issue in my heart and in my mind and settles it forever. And God, I'm convicted, I'm going to believe it whether anybody else does or not. Boy, that's just something powerful. God can defeat anything we see and anything we don't see. You think about that. Now, as we look at this, verse 30, Caleb said they could defeat the enemy and take possession of the land. The rest of the men said, giants too big and the giants are too strong. In other words, they were limiting God. They were living a limited life. Doesn't make any sense when it comes to the Heavenly Father. I want to try to hurry up every chance I get. Ephesians 6, 10 through 12. I hadn't preached in a couple of weeks, so this is, you just hold on to me now. Finally, the Bible says, Ephesians 6, 10 through 12, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. How, Lord? You tell me how. My desire in every circumstance, every family situation, every tragedy, every illness, every church problem, I desire to be strong in the strength of your might. You tell me how, Lord. He says, put on the whole armor of God. Notice that, not just part of it. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. I had a coach in Mountain Home High School. His name was Don Riggs. And Don Riggs played college football, I believe, at Arkansas State University. And eventually he went back to Jonesboro and coached the high school team there for years and years and years. He's since left this life. But Coach Riggs would get out there with us high school students, and he was a running back. And all he would do, we're all dressed up in pads and tackling attire. And Coach Riggs got out there with just a helmet on. So I'm going to wear a helmet just in case, but I don't think it's going to hurt me anyway. No pads and a helmet, and he ran through us like water. I never will forget that. I grabbed a hold of that man one time, about 40 yards down the field, he let go of me. I'll never forget that. But, well, that's one of the times I grabbed a hold of him. The rest I just bounced off of him. But he went out on that field. I wouldn't a bit more do that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a football team going out on the field with just helmets on, facing another team? Would you let your child do that? Would you let your child do that? I don't figure. And now you come to this, he said, I want you to put on the whole armor. Put on the whole armor of God. Listen, that you may be able to stand against, there it is. There it is, church. The schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness. 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 4, Satan is the god of this age. Then it goes on. Against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places. Not everything that's spiritual is good. We have to understand that. Did you notice that this tells us we, the people, are not the enemy? Now, sometimes we appear to be the enemy, but when we do those things, the grumbling and the stumbling and the backbiting and the gossiping, it's not because we have a heart filled with love or a heart filled with godliness. There's some other motivating factor. And so, we look at that. We've chosen at that time to do the devil's bidding, if you will. And it goes on to tell us we face a greater giant to defeat. His name is Satan. Satan wants us to battle each other, to interfere with something called love. He doesn't want us to love each other. He doesn't want us to care about each other. He doesn't want us to be there. This is because Satan can't defeat true biblical love. You hear me, church? He can't do it. You want to know how we're going to survive, how we're going to encourage one another on towards heaven? I'm going to close right here, okay? Just let this be it. How we're going to finally defeat and be what God would have us to be, it's whenever we look at God and look at His Word and we say, we need to be a congregation that believes, yes, we can. That as long as it's godly, long as it's right, long as what wouldn't possibly lead us down a wrong way, and we have a thus saith the Lord behind it. We need to be courageous people and grasp that, right? In our lives individually and as a congregation. when we refuse to stop loving each other biblically, and I don't know of anyone that's unloving or not loving one another. I'm just making a statement here. That we love each other, especially love the church the way God would have us to love it. And we realize that by loving the church and loving one another, we are more like God whenever we do that, and we are forgiving than at any other time in our lives. 1 John 4 and verse 8, book, chapter, and verse for that, because God is what? Love. Maybe someone here tonight, you're letting things get in your way. You've got that giant problem that's holding you down. Maybe you're someone that counts your problems more than you do your blessings. I'll never forget a man who was always negative, and somebody sat him down. He had a wife and several children. I don't know how many it happened to be. But the minister had him sit down and write out on paper, list all of his problems, his bad problems, and all of his blessings. And if I remember correctly, he had 5 problems and 76 blessings that he could list. And the minister simply asked him, why are you focusing so much on this when you have all this in your life? His problem was he thought God was against him. God's just turned against me because I have a problem. Ooh, ooh, ooh. See, the reality of it is, I don't know a single one of us going to get out of this world without a problem. And I've said for years and years and years, the problem with the problem is that it's a problem. Right? But we have a God bigger than any of our problems. Remember what Ralph Parley said? I've told you this many times. He wrote a book called The University of Hard Knocks. Ralph Parley said, it's never the size of the bump that matters, but the attitude of the bumpee. And I believe that. I also believe that a chip on your shoulder just indicates wood higher up. Right? Attitude determines altitude. All these little cliches that we could throw out there, they're all true. Maybe someone here tonight needs to say yes to the Lord. Won't you come as we stand and sing?